This morning, newly released video captures the moment gunshots rang out in Philadelphia. The massive crowd seen fleeing a popular nightlife area Saturday night as gunfire kills 3 people and leaves 11 others wounded.
Horrendous and unthinkable acts happened.
Just hours later in Chattanooga, Tennessee, police say 12 more people were injured and 2 others killed by gunfire at a nightclub.
There's going to be multiple shooters. We cannot confirm how many, but there's definitely more than one.
The back-to-back deadly shootings capping a weekend of gun violence across the nation.
Now, that was just some of the tragic gun violence that took place this past weekend, and it was the first weekend of June that marked a new record in America. It had a greater number of mass shooting deaths in the United States than the previous 3-day weekend. So in other words, every weekend, the gun violence tends to get worse. And just to give you some more details about, or more, I guess, comprehensive look at some of those shootings this past weekend. The tally for the first weekend of June through Sunday night was at least 12 killed and at least 38 injured in mass shootings, defined by Gun Violence Archive as an incident in which 4 or more people are shot or killed, not including the shooter. During the holiday weekend, 9 were killed and more than 60 were injured in attacks fitting that definition. Okay, so we had Memorial Day weekend where 9 people were killed, and then you have the weekend after that, this past weekend where 12 people are killed. The most notable violence this weekend took place in Philadelphia, where 3 were killed and 12 were injured, and in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which saw its second weekend in a row of mass shooter violence, this time with 2 dead and 12 others injured from gunfire. A 3rd person died after being struck by a car. And there was a shooting in South Carolina as well, a late Saturday graduation party. Great, a graduation party outside a residence was interrupted by a drive-up shooting that may have involved 2 vehicles, the sheriff's office said. A 32-year-old woman was struck by gunfire and died Sunday morning. 7 others, including children ages 12 to 17 and a 36-year-old, were injured. And there was also a shooting in Saginaw, Michigan early Sunday, a shooting that killed 3 people, including 2 men at the scene and a woman in the hospital. In Mesa, Arizona, there was yet another shooting over the weekend. This was early Sunday where 2 people were killed and 2 others were injured in the shooting at a nightclub. And so we're all terrorized by these shootings that are happening more often. They're happening all over the place, incredibly brazen, incredibly tragic. And so it's gotten so bad that even conservatives over at Fox News can't ignore it. And so John Roberts has an interview with Steve Scalise, a Republican representative, and asks him, hey, things look kind of bad. Why is it that it's so much worse in the United States compared to all these other countries? Let's take a look.
In terms of the developed world, the United States far and away leads every other nation in the developed world in terms of gun violence. Take a look at this graph. The US way out in front with 4 deaths per 100,000 people. The next closest nation is Cyprus, way behind at just below 0.7 deaths per 100 people. What do you think is responsible for that discrepancy?
Well, in a lot of those countries, first of all, I mean, you look at America, in the last couple of years, you've seen this crazy defund the police movement, but you've also seen a movement that's been going on for a few years in big cities where the DAs aren't even prosecuting criminals until it is a shooting.
So Steve Scalise pretending like this country wasn't dealing with mass shootings on the regular before the defund the police movement began. There was a tiny kernel of truth there in that some DAs, including George Gascon in LA, refused to charge criminals, violent criminals, with so-called gun enhancements if they are caught committing a crime with an illegal gun, and that is a problem. I will give him that point. However, to pretend as though mass shootings are like this new thing that are happening in America is a complete and utter lie. We all know that. Cenk.
Yeah, so let me give you important context here. So is there mass shootings everywhere in the world and that's just a fact of life? Hey, look, there's car accidents everywhere. It happens, right? No, there are many, many developed nations with absolutely 0 mass shootings, none. In fact, out of all the developed nations in the world, what percentage of the mass shootings happen in America? Now, if it's monstrous, it would be like 25% of the mass shootings happening in America, even though we're just one country out of all the developed nations in the world. It's not 25%, it's 73%. All the other countries combined is just 27% of the mass shootings. We have lost our minds. We give everyone a weapon and then go, oh, it's mental health issues. They got mental health issues in Japan, 0 shootings. They have mental health shootings in the UK, 0 mass shootings. Why? Because they have different laws. Oh, laws can't prevent it. Really? Then how come it did prevent it in New Zealand, Australia, UK, Japan, all the rest of the world? It totally and utterly prevents it. We don't prevent it here because we don't want to prevent it. So that's why you're gonna have mass shootings next weekend. And one of them will be in your area.
Yep.
And then the next weekend, and it'll be in somebody else's watching area. But it won't be one now. Now there's just there used to be one mass shooting. There's another word for mass shootings, by the way. It's called massacres. That's what we used to call them. There used to be one massacre a day in America. Now it's developed into about 3 or 4 massacres a day. I've lost track of how many massacres we have per day. As Republicans go, yeah, but on the other hand, I still got my check from the gun lobby.
That's right.
So
it's all that matters.
Yeah, so they don't mind so they say, well, I didn't pull the trigger. I didn't technically kill your kids. But do you mind the kids being killed? No, I don't mind at all. I know how to prevent it. We all know how to prevent it. Gun regulation. That's what every other nation did. They don't live on a different planet. They live on the same planet, okay? But they choose not to prevent it. And they choose to have your kids and other people die all the time in America. Why? Because they got to get paid. That's the kind of greedy scumbags these Republicans are. Now, Democrats are normally just as guilty, but in this case, actually, they stopped taking money from the NRA and from the gun lobby generally. There's still a couple of pro-gun guys like Henry Cuellar, who Nancy Pelosi and Jim Clyburn and the others kiss their ass of and help and support and endorse. But overall, Democratic Party doesn't take the money anymore. But the problem is the Democratic Party are such cowards.
Totally.
They can't fight back at all. They're total imbeciles who's like, I don't know, we have a federal background checks pull at 97%. How would we ever win on that issue? Well, if you can't win on an issue where you have 97% of the American people behind you, you're obviously an imbecile and you're obviously totally and utterly incompetent. So every Democratic incumbent should resign tomorrow and let real people that are fighters go fight the goddamn Republicans and win on these issues that are super easy to win on if you had just this much courage.
Super easy to win on, especially because the majority of Americans want common sense gun legislation. Now, before we get to the next video though, featuring Steve Scalise yet again, I just want to give you a little bit of context. Remember, Steve Scalise himself was the victim of gun violence. In 2017, during a congressional baseball game, a man shows up and decides to open fire. Scalise gets shot in the hip. And the individual who opened fire had a long history of issues that were reported to the police. So something like, let's say, red flag laws could have actually prevented him from having legal weapons. But Steve Scalise in this next clip lies about what red flag laws would entail. So let's take a quick look at that.
Do you support or oppose requiring background checks for all gun buyers? 89% of Americans say they support it, 8% oppose it. Do you support or oppose red flag laws? 74%, 21 oppose. You and other Republicans have views about background checks and red flag laws that would seem to run counter to what public sentiment is. So are the views that you and your colleagues hold out of step with where the nation is?
Well, I can assure you that the American public wasn't asked in that poll about components of the bills Democrats are moving through Congress to do those things. So, under the guise of red flag, they take away due process, where they literally can come into your house and take away your gun without you even knowing that there was some kind of proceeding where somebody said, oh, I think that guy might be a threat. So now somebody can go and take away your constitutional right.
Yeah, that's just a flat out lie. That is not how red flag laws would work. You would have an actual mental health professional do an evaluation before determining whether or not that individual has mental health concerns that should prevent him or her from obtaining a weapon. He knows that, And in fact, red flag laws would have prevented the very person who shot him from having legal weapons, okay? And I'm talking about James Hodgkinson, who opened fire, and apparently, St. Clair County Sheriff said that deputies had been called to his house about half a dozen times in the past 20 years. Okay. Also in 2016, the shooter was accused of beating his foster daughter and charged with domestic battery, but the case was dismissed when the alleged victim decided not to testify. Had Hodgkinson been convicted, he would have been unable to legally purchase firearms. And the list goes on and on. The guy had issues. He could have been evaluated, and if he was deemed a risk by an actual mental health professional, then he wouldn't have the access to the guns that he had, which he then used to shoot at members of Congress, including Steve Scalise.
So, but that's why they use Steve Scalise, and that's why Steve Scalise might be the only man in America more pathetic than Ted Cruz. So Ted Cruz licked the boots of Donald Trump after Trump called his wife ugly and his dad a murderer. But Steve Scalise himself got shot. And now, because he takes money from the gun lobby, he's used as their mascot. They're like, dance for us, boy. Put on your little mascot outfit, go on TV and lie on our behalf. Unless, I mean, I don't know. He just has no moral core at all, man. No moral core. Every one of these guys is disgusting. Let me go to graphic 4 to give you a sense of how lost the Republican Party is overall. Some 44% of Republicans say mass shootings are, quote, something we have to accept as a part of free society, according to a CBS YouGov poll that just came out. So it's not just their politicians. 44% of Republicans saying massacre our kids, we don't care. Massacre us, we don't care. Kill my neighbors, I don't care. Kill my mom, my dad, I don't care. As long as I get to keep my gun. Oh, I love firing this thing. Oh, makes me feel like a man. Maybe I'll go kill some libs, yeah. I mean, you all celebrate Kyle Rittenhouse, right? So these are the maniacs we have to live with in this country. And so don't tell me that there's nothing we can do. We know there's something we can do. And don't tell me that everybody is grieving. You're not grieving at all. If you're in that 44% of Republicans, you say, my hobby is more important than your kid's life. So I got no interest in you, man. But these Republicans are barbarians. I'm gonna give the last word to one of our members, Mary Animal on Twitch said, we really need to work on door control. And that's obviously a joke because you saw all those videos of people in the streets getting massacred, having to run. What's the door solution to that one, Ted Cruz? You want one door in a school, you want one door in every building, you want one door on the outside? When the biggest mass shooting was in Vegas, the guy shot from the hotel into an open field. Well, how are you gonna get one door on an open field? It ain't the goddamn doors, it's the guns. And until we can get the money out of politics for Republican politicians to stop being so evil and greedy, and the Republican voters for being so callous and disgusting, we're never gonna get any change. And this country needs just a flat out political revolution to just get rid of these Republican monsters. And also the pathetic Democrats who never, ever, ever take action. And the lying goddamn journalists that cover for both of them. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.